Oh, hello there. Hello. Well, welcome in. It's me, Amber Beck. Um, I want to start with saying that I would admit that when I first heard about the Great Molasses Flood, I thought it sounded kind of silly. A giant tank of syrup bursts open. It almost sounds like something out of a Tom and Jerry cartoon or something. But it wasn't a joke. It was horrifying. What happened in Boston on January 15th, 1919, wasn't just a strange headline. It was a real disaster, one that killed 21 people, injured over 150, destroyed homes, crushed horses, collapsed buildings, and left the streets filled with death, ruin, and grief. And the people caught in it never had a chance. Just after noon on a cold Wednesday, a giant storage tank 50 feet tall and 90 feet wide stood holding over 2.3 million gallons of molasses. Stop right there. Time out. Why do we need that much molasses? Not for pancakes and waffles, right? We're not going to eat that much. No, it is a main ingredient for ethanol and many other household supplies and items that are crucial to the industry. And what is 2.3 million gallons of molasses compared to? Well, that's like having 3,000 elephants, or more than the Eiffel Tower, about 93 blue whales, or 280 fully loaded semi-trucks, almost as much as a World War II Liberty ship, equal to 28 million pounds. That's about 14,000 tons of thick, sticky syrup. It belonged to the Purity Distilling Company, and it had been leaking for some time. Without much warning, the tank ruptured. Some people said the sound was like a gunshot. Others said it was a thunderclap, or metal tearing apart. Rivets popped off like bullets. Steel plates shot outward, and from the sides of the tank, not the top, a wave burst forward. A 40-foot tall tidal wave of molasses came roaring through Boston's north end at 35 miles per hour, as fast as a galloping horse. But this wasn't like water. It was heavier, thicker, slower, but deadlier. It crushed buildings, snapped timber, threw rail cars, lifted houses from their foundations, and people were swept off their feet before they even understood what had happened. Just feet from the tank, 28-year-old Harold Dorley was working in a second-floor office at the Boston and Worcester Freight Terminal. He'd predicted this tank would burst someday, and when he heard the sound, he stood up and said, "Molasses tank gone!" The wave slammed through the yard below, flooding the freight house and sweeping away 4 rail cars. His office floor held, just barely. When the chaos stopped, he helped save the company's safe and documents, and escaped by walking over a wooden plank laid across the sticky wreckage. At the firehouse nearby Engine 31, firefighters were eating lunch and playing cards when the wave hit. The molasses struck the station with such force the building collapsed, burying several men beneath the floor in a molasses-filled basement. One firefighter was found alive 2 days later, still breathing in a pocket of air. Others died before help could reach them. Down the street, 2 girls had been seen playing in front of the tank. One boy, possibly Pascal Lentosca, was thrown by the explosion into a telephone pole. He survived, but his 10-year-old brother Bruno was not as fortunate. He was lost to the wave, found later lodged beneath the hardened syrup. Another girl, Maria Di Stasio, also 10, died in the flood along with her father Salvatore, who tried to save her. In one of the most tragic stories, Martin and Teresa Clarity were sleeping at home when the wave struck. Their house, located at 6 Cops Hill Terrace, was lifted off its foundation and slammed into debris. The 2 siblings survived by clinging to the headboard of their bed as it floated through the wave. Martin lived. His sister, Teresa, later died from her injuries. Their home and Martin's business, the Pen and Pencil Club, were completely destroyed. Horses in the area stood no chance. Some were crushed instantly. Others were frozen mid-motion, legs tangled, struggling in molasses up to their necks. Rescuers had to shoot several. They simply could not be pulled free. One streetcar was lifted off its track and thrown sideways. Debris from homes, fences, rail lines, and people's lives piled up in a grotesque tangle. 4 days later, the body of a little girl was found, still dressed, still recognizable, but frozen in place beneath the hardened molasses. Her tiny frame had to be chipped free like stone. And then 4 months later, the body of a man who had gone missing was found floating in Boston Harbor, carried so far from the impact zone that no one had known where he went. It took seasons for him to surface. The river itself turned brown from the molasses. Streets were covered in it for weeks. Cleanup crews used salt water and sand to scrub down buildings and railways. Even after they finished, the smell lingered for months, especially in the summer heat. Molasses clung to walls, the doorknobs, to shoes. Red Cross workers handed out coffee to rescuers. Navy sailors from the USS Ranger waded knee-deep in syrup, hauling out bodies, clearing debris. Firefighters carried stretchers stained with molasses, exhausted and shaken. For days, Boston didn't look like Boston anymore. It looked like a battlefield. You can't hear this story and just laugh about being molasses. You can't picture syrup and think of pancakes after this. You have to picture children, firefighters, laborers, and animals all swept in something they never saw coming, something they couldn't outrun, something so bizarre and violent it almost doesn't seem real. But it is real. It was January 15th, 1919, and Boston would never be the same again. Thank you for watching, and thank you for remembering. If this story moved you, I hope you'll share it. Because the Great Molasses Flood wasn't just bizarre, it was heartbreaking, and it deserves to be remembered, not just for how strange it was, for the people it took, and the lives it changed forever.